All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome, YouTube. I've got quite a bit lined up here, so I'm going to push through. If anybody misses anything, point them back to the beginning. But there's your weather out there. Most significantly, we're going to move on, but that storm, tropical depression, still pushing lots of rain up in here. It looks like that's the remains of it right there, actually. Right over Walker Outdoors, maybe. Right over his house, it looks like. But definitely getting a lot of wet out that way. But more so right out of this is mandatory evacuation downstream of a dam in North Carolina, something to look into. It's on the eastern side, it looks like, or I should say the eastern side of the mountains. So it doesn't look like it's going to go in Tennessee. It looks like it's affecting the rest of North Carolina. Tahoma Dam. So there evacuations below the dam in McDowell County. A pair of landslides down around the dam that raised concerns about its integrity. Water is already spilling over the sides as of Tuesday night. So don't know that any of our listeners here necessarily be downstream of that. It doesn't say what river it's on. That would be useful because you figure if the dam fails, it's going to be Buck Creek along the Catawba River. Okay, from Buck Creek and Tahoma Road to the mouth of Lake James. Okay, now that makes sense. So a fairly limited area. Once it gets to the lake, it probably dissipates if it did fail. It's not like a lot of the western dams that are just absolutely huge. So it's a little bit more limited in scope. But still, that'd be a bad run if it did cut loose. So along the Catawba River there. So get that word out if you know anybody along that area. Oh, here they actually mapped it for us. And Lake James is down here somewhere. Or is that Lake James right there, maybe? Anyway, if they're near it, they know it. So people would be best advised. And schools are closed already. Here's some of the flooding off of Twitter, it looks like. So if you know anybody out there on the Catawba River, get them out of the house. Or at least wake them up. Well, they're already awake. It's daytime over there. What am I talking about? That's like flooding the streets in I'm not sure where that is. Old Fort Mountain. So lots of flooding still back east. Black Mountain flooding. Goodness. It's hitting a little bit everywhere. So potential dam failure, something to be aware of. So that's in there. Good morning. Black Cat Outdoors is with us. Saints and Sappers. What are you doing up so early, sir? Alicia Clay. Good morning. Castaway Planet. Good morning. Saints, you're probably having to bilge water out of your locations. You're probably getting a ton of that rain from that storm, huh? Actually, you're on top of the mountain, so you just got to make sure you don't landslide away or something. Truth Freeze is with us. Good morning. Yeah, it didn't say how many people were in danger. It didn't give a number. It's all the way down to Lake James, so it's going to be a limited area along the Catawba River. It tells you the distance from Marion and Asheville, but it doesn't tell you how far it is from the lake to Lake James, which is to be the most highly impacted areas. So I can't help you with that. Yeah, no estimate of numbers impacted or nothing like that. Maybe it's on Twitter somewhere. They're estimated they had 4 to 6 inches of rain since Tuesday. This is all part of Alberta. Yes, Truth Freeze. It's all part of Alberta, or leftover remains of it, or whatever. Yeah, there would definitely be thousands, truth freeze. It's not that rural. It's just spread out, dispersed. Doesn't look like there's any uh, large um, population centers between there and there, but there's definitely small little towns along the way, probably. Um, Lots of bridges. Hey, good morning, Scotsman. What's going on? You're probably getting some of this rain, or has it reached up your way that far yet from this tropical storm, Alberta? Alberto, not Alberta. Sorry. Says this is the highest crest since it set a record crest during Hurricane Francis in September 2004. So it's definitely high water, record level high water. So something to be on the lookout for, and probably other areas would be affected similarly. Any type of potential old dam structures or anything as this water gets higher and higher throughout the east, it looks like. All right, we're going to push on out of this. Just something to track. We're going to avoid the Rosie drama. Seems like to be a bigger distraction than anything, considering the lighthearted nature of the whole thing, and like everybody else gets away with stuff like that. But this came across the board a couple days ago. It just popped up kind of in the links. This is out of Politico in the EU. Poland offering up to $2 billion for a permanent U.S. military base. And we think about it like $2 billion seems like a lot of money. And then you think about like, man, $2 billion is nothing in the bigger scheme of trillions of dollars in debt. And that $2 billion would barely pay to get all the structures of any military base up and running. If you think of how much it costs to build a military base, would that even cover it? Like, is this more just I don't know, it's hard to determine, but it says Poland's asking for protection from Russia. Um, they talk here about Poland as different varying times. They've asked for more NATO presence since 1999 when they joined NATO. Um, I wonder what the central banks have to do with this myself, similar to the Ukraine situation. So the proposal, as it quotes here, defines the need for a clear and present need for a permanent U.S. armored division deployed in Poland. Poland's commitment to provide significant support that may reach $1.5 to $2 billion by establishing joint military installations and provide for more flexible movement of U.S. forces in the Polish Defense Ministry statement. So we're just going to start another Cold War with Russia. As it, well, we're continuing it. I wouldn't even say we restarted it a while back, but so definitely cement that angle. If we'd have just kept our business out of World War I, we imagine how much better off we would be. Poland currently hosts U.S. forces and NATO units, which are stationed in the country on a rotational basis, moving between Poland and the three Baltic states. And we've covered some of the Baltic rotations. That's been ongoing through the years. But I've never seen a Poland rotation, but it says that they've been doing them, but not a permanent station, obviously. I'd much rather do a unit deployment into Poland than Okinawa, though. I'll tell you that much. That doesn't sound like fun at all. Hey, who we got jumping in here? Why is the chat going crazy? Is this Wednesday's fun day for everybody? Right, Castaway. Yeah, the area is pretty limited in earthquakes around there, so that shouldn't be much of a concern. Hey, Irish, how's it going? Good morning. That's just a fob. Well, if you look at some of the fobs they set up in Iraq, yeah, $1 billion doesn't go very far to set up some of those Air Force joints. Hey, M. Long, good morning. You drenched? You dried out yet? Hey, right, Irish. Yeah, it would barely get you a fob. But I tell you what, Irish, seriously, would you rather go to Poland or Okinawa? Choice is yours. I'll take Poland any day of the week. Plus, there's potential for skiing. You're starting to get some pretty high waters up there at your Long. They're starting to recall. They're recalling staff or just notifying staff to be on standby. Yeah, I never made it to Bagram, Irish. I imagine it's nice pimped out though. Well, at least it was. I don't know where it's at condition now. All right, so moving on. So go check that again. Links are in the description box below to run down your own rabbit trails. The economic side, everybody saw yesterday the significant moves the stock market made down and the bond market in particular going. I mean, that was I don't know how the history looks at it, but that was a significant move with lower yield rates and the 10-year yield on the 10-year bond. And that was worldwide because this whole idiot Italy thing. So continuing on, Zero Hedge has got a good article, it looks like, on the Venezuela hyperinflation, which we've been following the collapse of Venezuela for how many years now? And they just recently had more elections. So we'll see how that goes. This talks specifically about the hyperinflation and what we can look forward to at some point down the road, even though yesterday, as we talked about, the U.S. is considered the biggest safe haven in the world, which is scary. It's going to start picking up here if this bond rate yields and interest rates continue to stay at these lows. So they put it in perspective with this graph. This pretty much says it all, and you can look at the article if you want to. That's just out of control. 13,860%. It doesn't get much worse than that. South Sudan comes in second at 104% inflation. Then on down the line. Who does the stats? I don't know, but Venezuela is definitely out of control. We're definitely Weimar Republic, Zimbabwe type territory. And where they'll get with it, we'll see. But just something to keep track of your socialist implosion of a country. Looks like it's hit this is the annual projected percentage change in inflation as of April of 2018. So that's where that's at. And that's pretty much the synopsis of the Zero Hedge article as well. So just a graph for you to use in your toolkit if you need it. On the, I don't know, was this technology side? Yeah, technology. Tesla's run into a police officer. An automated Tesla vehicle crashed into a Laguna Beach patrol vehicle. I'm sure nobody out there has bought one of these death traps, but it's find it humorous. A lot of people take opportunities to get their digs in on this. Looks like he hit him broadside too, and I guess the police officer was parked, which makes it even more concerning. So we're not in the world of Skynet just yet. They're not quite good enough to get past that.
Doesn't seem to work all the time out here at Laguna Canyon. Till then, we're asking Tesla drivers to keep their hands on the wheel. It happened late this morning. 65-year-old man in a Tesla, using its autopilot feature, smacked into a parked police SUV. The officer was about 1,000 yards just north of the location on another call. So he heard it and thought it was much worse than it was, and then went out there and realized that it was his car that the vehicle ran into. No one was seriously injured.
That's funny. So I guess the officer had parked his vehicle to walk away to another incident, to something else, to provide service. He got the call and he walked up and it was his vehicle that had been hit. That makes it even funnier. So it was a privately owned Tesla with its autopilot feature, it looks like, and it didn't work properly.
There have been at least 2 fatal autopilot accidents, including this one up in Northern California.
So there you go. There's your technology Skynet update for the day. They're not quite to that level yet, unless they are going automated and going after people, and crashing is a part of the program to take people out. Maybe that's the plot. We don't need to make them better, just take them out.
Just because you activate this doesn't mean.
All right. So check that out. Random people, good morning. Still no flying cars, right, Castaway Planet? We're not in the shoot, what was that cartoon? His boy Elroy and all of them. Hey, TR, have a good day. Have a good one. Thanks for dropping in. El Chavez is with us. Good morning. Well, they have a ton of sanctions, but they also have mismanaged their resources and are practicing extreme forms of socialism. So a lot of it's on their leadership. It's not just the sanctions. But it's definitely eating themselves from within. The Jetsons, thanks you, Truth Freeze. Thank you. So back on the economic front, and this came out yesterday, Soros. I guess when this guy speaks, you better listen and decipher what he's really trying to say, because you can never take him at face value. But I guess yesterday he made a speech and he said everything has gone wrong, and he warns of a major financial crisis. So some people reported on it. It was a brief blurb on the CNBC, but it kind of disappeared quickly, and Zero Hedge is the only ones that kind of ran with it with a different article as far as I've been able to find. But he was in Paris delivering a speech, and he said the world could be on the brink of another devastating financial crisis as debt crises emerge in Europe, and the strengthening dollar pressures both U.S. and emerging developed market rivals. But what did he also say? This is what I'm really looking for. Europe is facing 3 pressing problems this is Zero Hedge commentary. The refugee crisis, the austerity policies that has hindered Europeans' economic development, and territory disintegration. I think definitely agree on that, a lot of that. Says here, here's the real agenda. Brexit is an immensely damaging process, harmful to both sides. Yeah, they don't want to lose control of all the nations. So Brexit and all these independence movements are a harm to the globalist scheme. Whether it's financially painful or not is really irrelevant because it's going to happen one way or the other. Some more commentary. Graph of the Italian 2-year yield bond, which yesterday just absolutely, that's a straight line up if you can't see it. It was out of control. Doesn't seem to be much. So Soros went on to say that it is no longer a figure of speech to claim that the EU is an existential danger. It's an obvious reality. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. To escape the crisis, it needs to reinvent itself. What does that really mean when you're talking about the EU? Soros says by unilaterally withdrawing from the 2015 Iran nuclear deal, President Trump has effectively destroyed the transatlantic alliance. This has put additional pressure on an already beleaguered Europe. It is no longer a figure of speech to say that Europe is an existential danger. It is the harsh reality. And we talked last week about how the EU is trying to find different methods to trade with Iran to get oil. So they're looking at ways to make deals with Iran without using dollars in particular. So guess what? Okay, here's the kicker right here. So here's Soros's big deal. Here's his plan to avoid an all-out collapse. His plan would be a 30 billion euro Marshall Plan for Africa that Soros believes would help stem the flow of migrants into Europe, something that Soros finally admits is one of the biggest problems facing Europe. The EU, Soros believes, should use its largely unused borrowing authority to finance the plan. Global domination. That's the way to prevent European collapse. So Soros is definitely in it for the continuance of the global one world government agenda. A 30 billion, how far would, I mean, we talked about how far 2 billion to barely build you a US base in Poland. How far do you think 30 billion is going to go in Europe that has, I mean, Africa, that has very minimum infrastructure? Imagine trying to build that up in a Marshall Plan, as he says. How big was the original Marshall Plan? Like hundreds of millions in those dollars. Like you'd need $1 trillion plus nowadays to go into Africa. It's scraps, really. It's traps, probably what it is. Yes, we may be heading for another major financial crisis, sort of says. Explicitly, even. Yes, please tell us how you arrange this financial collapse there, George. How you see it playing out. So words from the man himself, see what his real agenda is, talking about a Marshall Plan into Africa, of all places, funded by the EU, which they'll get the US kicking their portion, of course. Well, meanwhile, China is funding their own trans-world trade partnerships and rail lines and everything else. Everybody else set on the sidelines. But to use $30 billion to stem the flow of migrants into Europe, that's a policy change that's going to matter, not some infrastructure change in Africa. You can easily change policy to stem the tide of any migrant problem you have. The speech is in full below, so they have the full speech below at the bottom of that article, so we'll check that out. Again, that's in your links in the description box. Check it out. But Soros letting a little bit out of the cookie bag, maybe, or if people don't know what his agenda is, maybe read between the lines a little bit on that to see what his angle is. What else is going on in the side chat here? We're running out over the last 5 minutes. It's going to pull up our last article here, which is also about the EU and the problems they're having across the pond. Yeah, Soros and others will benefit. Yeah, exactly. If he could stop sucking oxygen, yeah, he's a oxygen thief. Talking about eggs, bird flu, yeah. Um, Soros is a world problem, Saints. I would say that. He's definitely a problem for the whole world. And debt is king, Cookies 2050. Yes. Thanks for joining us. Good morning. Debt is definitely king somehow, some way. It doesn't make any sense, but it's debt based upon nothing, which makes it even worse. It's absolutely made out of thin air. The debt is only created by somebody saying that they owe somebody when it was based upon nothing to begin with. All right, so here's a article again in the Zero Hedge talking about Brexit and now the Italy exit as well is coming about with this Italy problem. So they're putting names. This is kind of a joke article, but they're putting names to the different types of when people leave the EU, what they're going to call it. So it's more of a funny graph there, but legitimately, the Italy leaving the EU is a possibility. Their financial issues are not being dealt with. The president is ignoring basically the parliamentarians. It's not it's all the other representatives that have formed the government out of the elections they had. They've rescheduled another election because the president didn't like their idea. So obviously their politics is a little bit different than ours, but Italy's on the cusp of, because both parties that have power are ready to leave the EU. So that's not going to help out, but they got Brexit, Hispanope, they got all kinds of weird names. Noland, but it's funny. Right, Cookies? Yeah, Kissinger's got his fingers in the White House for sure. Yeah, Soros isn't a one-man show, but he definitely pushes an ideology that a lot of people follow because they think they're going to get rich off of it. If he went on, maybe somebody could emerge that would direct that ship another direction. Truth, where were you at Monday? No, Catalonia is still controlled by the Spanish government. We were talking about protests they were having on the beach the other day down there. We talked about it. I'm pretty sure it was Monday. Yeah, Catalonia is still going through its problems. The Spanish government doesn't recognize the Catalonian government, which is still led by secession-minded leaders, I guess you'd say. So that's ongoing. But that's the rundown today, folks. We kind of took up the full 30 there. Stay high and dry if you're east of Denver, I guess. And if you're in western North Carolina, central North Carolina, watch out for that dam collapse. And anywhere else in these areas, you can see right where that storm is still circling, pushing a lot of rain and everything else. Looks like Saints, look like your house is getting a little wet too if you're still here with us. So make sure your gutters are working. Get those water catchment systems set up good. Yeah, Jeremiah, we talked about that first thing, and yeah, it's in your description box below with a link on some of that story. It's the Catawba River, Jeremiah, depending on where you're at or if you know anybody along there. All right, so a fairly busy day today. You guys stay out of trouble yourselves. Stay dry if you have to or if you need to. And we will talk at you tomorrow. Well, wait, tomorrow's Thursday. I'm not going to do Thursdays. I'm going to try. We've done this enough. 4 weeks? Well, it's been a few more weeks than that. Thursdays are horrible. I'm not even going to try to attempt a Thursday, so no chat tomorrow. We'll see you back here on Friday. Live free.